Can I have coffee with you? The innocent question from a 6-year-old girl shattered the silence of the coldest man in the city. What he answered shocked everyone, and what happened next will change your heart forever. Sebastian Westwood adjusted his platinum cufflinks as he stared at the untouched breakfast spread before him. The enormous dining table could seat 20 people, but only one chair was ever occupied. His chair. The silence in the mansion was so complete that he could hear the antique clock ticking in the hallway, each second marking another moment of the empty existence he had crafted for himself. At 47 years old, Sebastian had everything money could buy. A technology empire worth billions, a mansion that had been featured in architectural magazines, cars that cost more than most people's homes. But he had perfected the art of feeling absolutely nothing. His employees feared him, his business partners respected him from a distance, and his family had long ago stopped trying to reach the man who had locked himself away after tragedy struck. "Mr. Westwood, your coffee." The voice was barely above a whisper. He didn't look up. He never looked up. Marina Costa had been cleaning his mansion for 2 years, arriving at dawn and leaving after dark, moving through the rooms like a ghost. He couldn't remember her face, didn't care to remember. She was just another person paid to maintain the illusion that this house was a home rather than a mausoleum. "Leave it," he said, his voice flat and cold. What Sebastian didn't know was that this morning would be different, because Marina's carefully constructed childcare arrangements had collapsed, and she had made a desperate decision that would change everything. The kitchen door swung open, and small footsteps echoed across the marble floor. Sebastian looked up, his expression shifting from indifference to shock. A little girl stood in the doorway of his dining room, maybe 6 years old, with golden hair tied back with a red bandana. She wore simple denim overalls and carried a worn backpack decorated with cartoon characters. Her blue eyes were wide with wonder as she took in the opulent room. "Wow," she breathed, staring at the crystal chandelier above. "It's like a palace." "Who are you?" Sebastian's voice was sharp, cutting. "How did you get in here?" The girl didn't flinch at his tone. Instead, she walked closer, her small feet making soft padding sounds on the expensive marble. "I'm Emma. My mom works here. She said I had to wait in the kitchen, but I heard voices, and I got curious." She tilted her head, studying him with unsettling directness. "You're eating breakfast all alone? That's none of your concern." Sebastian reached for his phone, ready to call security, to have this intrusion removed immediately. "It looks sad," Emma continued, oblivious to his rising anger. "All this food and just you. My mom says nobody should eat alone because it makes the food taste bad." She paused, then smiled with devastating innocence. "Can I have coffee with you?" The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to detonate. Sebastian stared at this child, who had just asked the impossible. No one asked to join him. No one dared to invade his carefully maintained isolation. He opened his mouth to say no, to call for Marina and have her remove this interruption immediately. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the way Emma looked at him without fear, without the careful deference everyone else showed. Maybe it was how long it had been since anyone had looked at him and seen just a person, not a fortress of money and power. Maybe it was the ghost of a memory, a daughter's voice from years ago asking similar questions before the world fell apart. "You want coffee?" he heard himself say, his voice strange even to his own ears. Emma's face lit up with pure joy. "Really? You'll let me?" "I said coffee," Sebastian replied, reverting to his cold tone. "Not permission to talk my ear off." "Deal." Emma dropped her backpack and climbed into the chair beside him, her legs too short to reach the ground. She swung them happily as she surveyed the breakfast spread like it was treasure. "Can I have orange juice instead? Mom says coffee stunts your growth." Despite himself, Sebastian felt the corner of his mouth twitch. He pushed the crystal pitcher of freshly squeezed orange juice toward her. "Help yourself." Emma poured juice with intense concentration, her small hands careful not to spill. When she had filled her glass, she looked at all the food with wide eyes. "Is this all for you every day?" "Yes." "Do you eat it all?" "No." "Then why so much?" "Because I can afford it." The answer came automatically, the same logic he had used for years to justify excess. Emma frowned, picking up a croissant. "My mom says just because you can doesn't mean you should. She says waste is sad." She took a bite, her eyes closing with pleasure. "But this is really good. Did your wife make it?" I don't have a wife. Girlfriend? No. Who makes breakfast then? The cook. Emma processed this information while chewing. So you pay someone to make food you don't eat, and you eat it alone in this big room? She looked around again. That does sound sad. Sebastian felt something crack inside him, a fissure in the wall he had built so carefully. You're very bold for a 6-year-old. I'm almost 7, Emma corrected. And my mom says I ask too many questions, but I can't help it. I'm curious. She studied his face with unnerving intensity. You look like my teacher, Mr. Peterson, when he talks about his divorce. Sad on the inside, but pretending not to be. I'm not pretending anything, Sebastian said, his jaw tight. Okay. Emma clearly didn't believe him, but was too polite to argue. Instead, she took another bite of croissant. This house is really big. Do you have kids? The question landed like a physical blow. Sebastian's hand tightened around his coffee cup until his knuckles went white. No, he said, his voice barely controlled. I don't have children. Something in his tone must have finally registered because Emma's expression softened. Did you used to? The silence that followed was crushing. Sebastian couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. How did this child see through him so easily? I'm sorry, Emma said quietly, with a wisdom that seemed impossible for her age. My friend Sarah's dad died, and she gets that same look sometimes. Like something inside hurts really bad, but you can't show it. Sebastian stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Your mother should be looking for you. This was inappropriate. I didn't mean to make you sad, Emma said quickly, her voice small. I just wanted company for breakfast. My mom works so much that sometimes I eat alone too, and I don't like it. Before Sebastian could respond, Marina burst into the dining room, her face pale with panic. Emma, I told you to stay in the kitchen. She rushed forward, grabbing her daughter's arm. Mr. Westwood, I'm so sorry. I had no one to watch her today. My sister got sick and I couldn't afford to miss work. But I should have. It's fine, Sebastian heard himself say. Marina froze, clearly not believing what she had heard. In 2 years of working for him, he had never said anything was fine. He had never shown flexibility or understanding. Sir, your daughter asked if she could have breakfast with me. Sebastian looked at Emma, who was watching him with hopeful eyes. I said yes. Marina's mouth opened and closed, no sound coming out. She looked from Sebastian to Emma and back again, trying to process this impossible situation. She can finish eating, Sebastian continued, sitting back down in his chair. Then she can wait in the kitchen until you're ready to leave. Emma beamed. Thank you. Can I come back next time Mom has to bring me? Emma, Marina gasped. You can't ask. She can, Sebastian interrupted, surprising himself as much as Marina. He looked at the little girl who had done something nobody else had managed in 5 years. She had made him feel something other than numbness. If your mother needs to bring you again, you can have breakfast here, but only if you follow the rules. What rules? Emma asked eagerly. No running in the house. No touching things that don't belong to you. And, he paused, something unfamiliar tugging at his chest. You have to tell me about your day. That's the price of breakfast. Emma's smile could have powered the entire mansion. Deal. Today I'm learning about butterflies at school. Did you know some butterflies only live for 2 weeks? Isn't that sad? They're so pretty, but they don't get much time. As Emma chattered about butterflies and school and her favorite books, Sebastian found himself listening. Actually listening. For the first time in 5 years, the silence in his mansion was broken by something other than the ticking clock. Marina stood frozen by the door, watching her employer nod at her daughter's stories, even asking an occasional question. This was not the cold, distant man she had worked for. This was someone different, someone she had never seen before. When Emma finally finished her juice and croissant, she slid off the chair and walked over to Sebastian. Before he could react, she hugged his arm quickly. Thank you for breakfast. You're nicer than you pretend to be. Then she was gone, skipping back to the kitchen with her mother, leaving Sebastian alone again. But the silence felt different now. Less like a sanctuary, and more like a prison. Sebastian looked down at his arm where Emma had hugged him, at the empty chair beside him where she had sat, at the half-eaten croissant she had left behind. Something inside him that had been frozen solid for 5 years was beginning to thaw, and it terrified him, because Sebastian Westwood knew what happened when you let people in. He knew the price of attachment, the devastating cost of love. He had sworn never to pay it again. But a 6-year-old girl with a red bandana and an innocent question had just cracked open a door he thought he had sealed forever. And he had no idea if he had the strength to close it again. The following Saturday, Marina arrived at the mansion with Emma in tow. The little girl practically bounced through the kitchen door, her backpack swinging with excitement. She had talked about nothing else all week, asking her mother every day if it was time to have breakfast with Mr. Sebastian again. Sebastian found himself waiting in the dining room earlier than usual, pretending to read the financial news on his tablet. When he heard the small footsteps approaching, something inside his chest tightened with an emotion he couldn't name. "Good morning," Emma announced cheerfully, climbing into what had become her chair. "I brought you something." She pulled out a drawing from her backpack, done in crayon on construction paper. It showed 2 stick figures sitting at a table, one big and one small, with a yellow sun in the corner and the words, "Thank you for breakfast," written in uneven letters. Sebastian stared at the drawing, his throat suddenly tight. "You made this for me?" "Yeah, I'm not good at spelling yet, but my teacher says I'm getting better." Emma pointed at the larger stick figure. "That's you. I gave you a smile because, even though you're sad inside, I think you should smile more." Before Sebastian could respond, his phone rang. The caller ID showed his brother's name. He almost declined, but something made him answer. "Sebastian, finally." His brother Jonathan's voice was clipped, irritated. "Mother's having a dinner party tonight. She expects you there. 7 sharp. "I don't do dinner parties anymore, Jonathan. You know that." "It's been 5 years, Sebastian. Mother thinks it's time you rejoined the living. Important people will be there. The Hendersons, the Ashfords, Senator Morrison." "Tell Mother I said no." Sebastian moved to hang up. "She said if you don't come, she's cutting your access to the family foundation board. She means it this time." Sebastian's jaw clenched. The foundation had been his late wife's passion project, the last piece of her he still protected. His mother knew exactly which strings to pull. "Fine. 7 o'clock. He ended the call and threw the phone onto the table with more force than necessary. "Are you okay?" Emma asked, her small face concerned. "I'm fine." The lie tasted bitter. "You don't look fine. You look like you're going to break something." Emma took a sip of her orange juice. "My mom makes that face when the landlord calls about rent." The innocent comparison between his billion-dollar problems and real financial struggle made Sebastian pause. This child lived in a world he had forgotten existed, where phone calls about money meant actual survival, not just wounded pride. "It's complicated," he said finally. "Grown-up stuff?" "Yes." Emma nodded sagely. "Grown-ups make everything complicated. My teacher says that's because you forget how to be simple and happy." She took a bite of pancake. "Can I ask you something?" "You're going to regardless of my answer. Why do you live in this big house all alone? Don't you get lonely?" The question pierced through his defenses like a knife. "I prefer being alone." "That's not what I asked. I asked if you get lonely. They're different things." Emma's blue eyes were far too perceptive. "You can prefer something and still be sad about it." Sebastian found himself without a response. This 6-year-old had just articulated something he had been denying for 5 years. "You should come to my school's art show next week," Emma said, changing the subject with the lightning-fast pivot of childhood. "I have 3 drawings in it. Well, 4 if you count the group project, but that's not really mine." "I don't think that's appropriate, Emma. I barely know you. But we're breakfast friends now. That's what Mom says. She says anyone who shares breakfast with you is a friend." Emma swung her legs under the table. "Please? Nobody else is coming for me. Mom has to work, and I'm the only kid without someone there." The casual way she said it, as if being alone was just a fact of life, made something twist in Sebastian's chest. He thought of all the school events his daughter had participated in, how he and his wife had attended every single one, cameras ready, pride bursting. "I'll think about it," he heard himself say. Emma's smile was like sunrise. "Really? You promise?" "I said I'll think about it. That's not a promise." "It's close enough." Emma pulled out a crumpled flyer from her backpack. "Here. It's on Thursday at 2 o'clock. The school is called Riverside Elementary. You can't miss it. There's a big blue butterfly painted on the wall outside." Sebastian took the flyer, staring at the cheerful graphics advertising the art show. What was he doing? He didn't go to elementary school events. He didn't get involved in the lives of his employees' children, but he folded the flyer and put it in his pocket anyway. That evening, Sebastian arrived at his mother's estate dressed in an impeccable suit, his face a mask of cold indifference. The mansion was filled with exactly the kind of people he had been avoiding for years: wealthy, superficial, gossiping behind champagne glasses. Victoria Westwood swept toward him the moment he entered, her designer gown rustling with each step. "Sebastian, darling, I'm so glad you came to your senses. Let's get this over with, Mother. Still charming as ever, I see." She linked her arm through his, parading him around like a prize. "Everyone! Look who finally decided to rejoin society." The evening was exactly as tedious as Sebastian had anticipated. Fake smiles, meaningless small talk, people pretending to care about each other's lives, while really just measuring wealth and status. He was counting down the minutes until he could leave when Constance Ashford, a woman who had been friends with his late wife, cornered him by the bar. "Sebastian, I heard the most peculiar thing." Her voice dripped with false sweetness. "My housekeeper mentioned that Marina Costa, your maid, has been bringing her daughter to your home. On weekends, no less." Sebastian's entire body went rigid. "What of it?" "Well, it's just unusual, don't you think? A man of your position, spending time with the help's child?" Constance's smile was venomous. "People might get the wrong idea." "What people?" Sebastian's voice was dangerously quiet. "Oh, you know how it is. Tongues wag. Some might think you're getting inappropriately close to your staff." She paused for effect. "Or worse, that you're being taken advantage of. A wealthy, grieving widower is such easy prey for ambitious women." The implication hung in the air like poison. Before Sebastian could respond, his mother appeared with Jonathan and several other guests. "What's this about Marina Costa?" Victoria demanded, having clearly overheard. "It's nothing," Sebastian said tersely. "It doesn't sound like nothing." Jonathan smirked. "Are you really having breakfast with the maid's kid? What's next, Sebastian? Birthday parties? Family dinners?" Laughter rippled through the group that had gathered, drawn by the scent of scandal. "The girl asked to join me for breakfast," Sebastian said, his voice cold. "I allowed it, that's all." "How charitable," Constance purred. "Though I do wonder what the child wants. Children from those backgrounds learn very young how to manipulate wealthy benefactors." "She's 6 years old," Sebastian growled. "Almost 7, Victoria corrected, having clearly done her research. "Old enough to be coached by an opportunistic mother. Marina has never asked me for anything." "Not yet," Jonathan interjected. "Give it time. First it's breakfast, then it's school supplies, then tuition, then a college fund. Before you know it, you're supporting an entire family that isn't yours." The group laughed again, and Sebastian felt rage building in his chest. But before he could defend Emma and Marina, Constance delivered the killing blow. "You know, Sebastian, it's really quite sad. You're clearly trying to replace Emily with some random child off the street. Your daughter was brilliant, accomplished, special. This little girl is just ordinary, a poor substitute for what you lost." The room went silent. Even Victoria looked uncomfortable at the mention of Emily, Sebastian's daughter who had died 5 years ago. Sebastian's hands clenched into fists. "Don't you dare speak about my daughter." "I'm just being honest, darling." Constance sipped her champagne. "We all grieve differently, but this is borderline pathetic. Clinging to a child who probably can't even read properly yet, just because she pays attention to you. It's beneath you. You want to know what's beneath me?" Sebastian's voice was ice. "Standing here listening to you people pretend you're better than a 6-year-old girl just because you were born with money instead of earning your worth." Victoria grabbed his arm. "Sebastian, you're making a scene." "Good." He pulled away from her. "Emma is more genuine than anyone in this room. She asked to have breakfast with me because she thought I looked lonely. Not because she wanted something. Not because she was networking. Because she saw another human being sitting alone and thought that was sad." "How touching," Jonathan said mockingly. "The billionaire and the charity case. That charity case has more wisdom in her little finger than you have in your entire body." Sebastian's voice rose. "She sees things clearly. because she hasn't been corrupted by your shallow, materialistic worldview yet. Really? Constance's eyes glittered with malice. Then let's test this wisdom you speak of. Bring her here next week to the gallery opening. If she's so special, she should be able to handle herself in polite society. Unless, of course, she's just an ordinary child being elevated beyond her station because you're lonely and desperate. It was a trap, and Sebastian knew it. But something in him snapped. Fine, he said coldly. I'll bring her. And when she proves you all wrong, I want apologies. From every single one of you. Victoria's face went pale. Sebastian, you can't be serious. A child from that background at the Ashford Gallery opening? She'll be humiliated. Or, Sebastian said, his voice deadly quiet, you will be. He left the party immediately, ignoring his mother's calls. As he drove home through the dark streets, he realized what he had done. He had just wagered Emma's dignity on a bet to prove a point to people he despised. What kind of man did that make him? When he arrived home, he saw the light still on in the kitchen. Marina was there, finishing her cleaning. She looked up, surprised to see him. Mr. Westwood, I thought you were at dinner. I was. It was insufferable. He paused. Marina, I need to ask you something. Does Emma know anything about art? Classical art, I mean. Marina's expression became guarded. Why? Sebastian explained the situation, watching Marina's face grow more troubled with each word. Sir, with all due respect, this is a terrible idea. Those people will eat her alive. Not if she's prepared. Not if... He stopped. What did you just say? Those people will eat her alive? You sound like you know them. Marina looked away. I've worked in enough wealthy homes to know the type. They'll smile to her face and destroy her behind her back. Emma is sweet and innocent. She shouldn't be used as a pawn in your family drama. It's not drama, it's... Sebastian paused. Actually, you're right. This was a mistake. I'll tell them no. You can't, Marina said quietly. If you back out now, they'll say it's because you know Emma isn't special. They'll use it as proof that she's ordinary, that you're just a desperate man clinging to false hope. Sebastian stared at her. How do you know that's what they'll say? Because it's what they always say. People like that need to believe that worth comes from wealth, because if it doesn't, then they're not special at all. They're just lucky. Marina met his eyes. But here's what you don't know about my daughter, Mr. Westwood. What? Emma is special. Not because of money or status or connections. She's special because she sees beauty everywhere. And she can create it too. She's been drawing since she was 3 years old. Her teachers say she has a gift. Marina pulled out her phone and showed him photos. These are hers. Sebastian stared at the images. They were stunning. Not childish scribbles, but genuinely artistic renderings. A butterfly in colored pencil that looked ready to fly off the page. A portrait of Marina that captured not just her features, but her essence, her exhaustion and love combined. A sunset over the neighborhood done in crayon that had depth and emotion. She's 6 years old, Sebastian whispered. Almost 7, Marina corrected. And she's been teaching herself by studying art books from the library. She looks at paintings and books and recreates them from memory. She can identify artists by their style. Not because I taught her, but because she loves it. It's who she is. Sebastian looked up at Marina with new respect. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because you never asked about her as a person. You just allowed her to have breakfast with you. That doesn't mean you know her. Marina's voice was firm. And now you want to parade her in front of your cruel friends like she's a performing monkey. Do you know what that will do to her if she fails? She won't fail, Sebastian said with sudden conviction. Marina, if Emma is half as talented as these drawings suggest, she'll blow them all away. And if she doesn't? If she gets nervous or scared? If they ask her questions she can't answer? What then, Mr. Westwood? You'll go back to your empty life, but Emma will carry that humiliation forever. The words hit Sebastian like physical blows. Marina was right. He had been so focused on proving his point to his family that he hadn't considered the cost to Emma. I'll make sure she's protected, he said finally. I won't let them hurt her. You can't protect her from everything. Not in that world. Marina began gathering her cleaning supplies. But if you're really going to do this, then do it right. Don't prepare her for them. Let her be herself, because that's what makes her special, not her ability to impress snobs. After Marina left, Sebastian sat in his empty dining room, staring at the drawing Emma had made for him. Two stick figures sharing breakfast, both smiling. He had spent 5 years building walls to protect himself from pain, but Emma had walked through them like they didn't exist, asking one simple question: "Can I have coffee with you?" And now he was about to throw her into a den of wolves to prove that her innocence and authenticity were more valuable than his family's cruel sophistication. He just hoped he wasn't making the biggest mistake of his life, because the last time he had failed to protect someone he cared about, they had died, and he didn't think his heart could survive that kind of loss again. Thursday arrived faster than Sebastian expected. He stood outside Riverside Elementary, feeling absurdly out of place in his tailored suit among parents in casual work clothes. The blue butterfly Emma had mentioned was faded but cheerful on the brick wall. Inside, the gymnasium had been transformed into a makeshift gallery. Children's artwork covered every available surface, bright crayon drawings mixed with watercolor paintings and clay sculptures. Parents milled around with paper cups of juice, proudly pointing out their children's work. Sebastian found Emma's section quickly. She had told him to look for the butterflies. What he saw made him stop breathing. 4 paintings hung in a row, each one depicting butterflies in different styles. But these weren't crude children's drawings. The first was rendered in the style of Van Gogh, thick, swirling strokes of color that captured the post-impressionist master's technique perfectly. The second mimicked Monet's water lilies, but with butterflies dancing over the pond. The third was stark and geometric, clearly influenced by Picasso's Cubist period. The fourth was photorealistic, every detail of the monarch butterfly's wings captured with stunning precision. "Mr. Sebastian!" Emma appeared at his elbow, wearing a dress that was clearly homemade but clean and pressed. "You came. You really came. I promised I'd think about it." Sebastian couldn't take his eyes off the paintings. "Emma, did you really paint these?" "Uh-huh. My teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, gave me the assignment to paint butterflies, but I got bored doing just one style, so I tried painting like different famous artists." She pointed at each one. "That's Van Gogh, that's Monet, that's Picasso, and that last one I did from a photograph in the library book." "You're 6 years old." "Almost 7, Emma corrected automatically. "Do you like them?" A woman approached, middle-aged with kind eyes and paint-stained fingers. "You must be Mr. Westwood. I'm Sarah Rodriguez, Emma's art teacher." She extended her hand. "Thank you for coming." Emma was so excited that someone was coming for her. "These paintings," Sebastian gestured. "How is this possible?" Mrs. Rodriguez smiled. "Emma is what we call a prodigy. She has an eidetic memory for visual information. She can look at a painting once and reproduce not just the image, but the technique, the brush strokes, the style. I've been teaching for 20 years, and I've never seen anything like it. Why isn't she in special programs, advanced classes?" "Because those cost money, Mr. Westwood." Mrs. Rodriguez's voice was gentle but firm. "Emma's mother works 3 jobs. There's no budget for enrichment programs. I give Emma extra materials when I can, books to borrow, but my resources are limited." Sebastian felt something shift inside him. Here was genuine genius, trapped by circumstances of birth. While his family mocked Emma as ordinary, she possessed a gift that money couldn't buy and most people would never have. What would she need? The question came out before he could stop it. To develop this talent properly? Mrs. Rodriguez looked at him carefully. "Are you offering to help?" "I'm asking what she needs. Private instruction from a real artist, access to quality materials, exposure to actual galleries and museums, not just library books." She paused. "And time. Time to create without worrying about whether her mother can pay rent." Before Sebastian could respond, Emma tugged his sleeve. "Come see the other kids work. There's a really cool clay dragon over there." As Emma pulled him around the gymnasium, chattering about her classmates' art, Sebastian found himself seeing the world through her eyes. She found beauty in everything, even the simplest crayon drawing. She encouraged other children, told them their work was wonderful, made them feel special. This was what his family had mocked, this generosity of spirit, this authentic joy. They called it ordinary, because they had forgotten what it meant to be human. "Mr. Westwood?" A familiar voice made him turn. Constance Ashford stood in the gymnasium doorway, looking horrifically out of place in her designer outfit. Behind her were Jonathan and two other people from the dinner party. "What are you doing here?" Sebastian demanded. "You mentioned the art show. We were curious." Constance's smile was predatory. "Wanted to see this extraordinary child before the gallery opening. Consider it due diligence." Emma looked between them, sensing the tension. "Who are they?" "No one important," Sebastian said firmly. Now. Constance approached, studying Emma like an insect under glass. "You must be Emma. Your paintings are quite impressive. For a child." "Thank you." Emma's voice was polite but uncertain. "Tell me, dear, did you have help with these? Perhaps your teacher guided your hand?" Mrs. Rodriguez stepped forward. "I can assure you, Emma created these entirely on her own." "Of course you'd say that," Jonathan smirked. "You're her teacher, but anyone can copy a style if they're shown how." "I didn't copy!" Emma's voice rose, indignant. "I studied the artists and learned their techniques. That's different from copying." "Is it?" Constance knelt down to Emma's eye level, her smile false. "Then prove it. If you're really as talented as Mr. Westwood claims, paint something right now, in the style of, let's say Dali. You know who that is, don't you?" Emma's eyes widened. Sebastian saw her small hands clench into fists. She was scared, but trying to hide it. "Leave her alone," Sebastian said coldly. "Why? If she's genuine, she should be able to demonstrate her gift." Constance straightened. "Unless, of course, this is all exaggerated. Maybe these paintings were heavily assisted. Maybe Emma is just an average child who got lucky." "I'm not average," Emma said quietly, her voice trembling but determined. "And I don't need luck." "Then show us." Jonathan crossed his arms. "Paint something. Prove you're worth all this fuss." Mrs. Rodriguez looked horrified. "This is completely inappropriate. You're adults bullying a 6-year-old child." "We're simply asking her to demonstrate her abilities," Constance said smoothly. "If she's really going to attend the gallery opening, she'll need to handle much worse scrutiny than this." Emma looked up at Sebastian, her blue eyes searching his face. "Do you want me to prove it?" The question broke his heart. This child, who had shown him nothing but kindness and authenticity, was asking if she needed to perform to earn his defense. "No," Sebastian said firmly. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone, Emma. These people aren't worth your time." "But I want to," Emma said quietly. "I want to show them." "Emma, you don't have to. Please." She looked at him with that unsettling wisdom. "Let me." Mrs. Rodriguez brought paper and paints. The small crowd that had gathered watched as Emma sat on the floor, her small body dwarfed by the adults standing around her. Her hands didn't shake as she picked up the brush. Sebastian watched Emma work, and what he saw was transcendent. She didn't hesitate, didn't pause to think. Her brush moved with confidence, creating the melting, dreamlike imagery that defined Dali's surrealist work. A clock draped over a tree branch, distorted and fluid, a butterfly emerging from an eye, the distinctive elongated shadows. It took her 15 minutes. When she finished, even Constance had gone pale. The painting was unmistakably Dali in style, but the subject matter was Emma's own. A small girl sitting at an enormous table, the furniture melting around her, butterflies floating up from a coffee cup. It was surreal, haunting, and heartbreaking. "She painted her loneliness," Mrs. Rodriguez whispered. "That's what great artists do. They transform emotion into image." Emma stood up, her dress stained with paint. She looked at Constance without fear. "Is that good enough?" Constance recovered her composure quickly. "It's adequate. But technique isn't everything. The gallery opening will test much more than your ability to mimic styles. You'll need to discuss art history, theory, context. Can you do that?" "I read a lot," Emma said simply. "We'll see." Constance smiled coldly. "Saturday night. Don't be late. And do try to wear something appropriate." After they left, Emma's brave facade crumbled. She buried her face in Sebastian's jacket, her small body shaking. "I don't want to go to their party. They're mean." Sebastian picked her up, something he hadn't done since Emily died. "You don't have to go. I never should have agreed to this. But if I don't, they'll say you were wrong about me. They'll say I'm ordinary." Emma pulled back to look at him. "Are you ashamed of me?" "What? No." Sebastian was horrified. "Emma, I'm in awe of you. Then why do I have to prove it? Why can't they just believe you? The question was simple, but the answer was complicated. Because his family valued nothing they couldn't quantify or control. Because they needed to diminish others to feel superior. Because he had spent 5 years playing their games instead of living his truth. You're right, Sebastian said quietly. You shouldn't have to prove anything. I'm calling this off. No. Emma's voice was small but firm. I want to go. I want to show them that being poor doesn't mean being ordinary. My mom works so hard, and people like them act like she's invisible. Like I'm invisible. Her eyes filled with tears. But I'm not invisible. I'm here. I matter. Sebastian felt something crack wide open in his chest. This 6-year-old child had more courage than he had shown in 5 years. You're right, he said. You do matter. And I'm going to make sure everyone knows it. That night, Sebastian made phone calls. By morning, Emma had a wardrobe consultant, a tutor in art history, and unlimited access to his private art collection to study. If his family wanted to test her, she would be prepared. But as he watched Emma study paintings with fierce concentration, he realized something that made him cold with fear. He had spent 5 years protecting himself from attachment by staying isolated. Now he was attached. To Emma, to Marina, to the idea that maybe he could have a family again. And if anything happened to them, if his family's cruelty hurt them, he would never forgive himself. The gallery opening was 2 days away, and Sebastian had no idea if he was saving Emma or destroying her. Sebastian spent the next 2 days transforming his study into an art classroom. He hired Professor Leonard Chen, a retired curator from the Metropolitan Museum, to work with Emma on art history and theory. He had Marina's work schedule cleared, paying her double to spend time helping Emma prepare. But mostly, he watched Emma be herself. She studied paintings with the same joy she brought to everything else. When Professor Chen showed her a Rembrandt, she didn't just analyze the technique. She talked about how the subject looked lonely, how the shadows felt like sadness. She understood art not as an intellectual exercise, but as human expression. Mr. Westwood, Professor Chen said on Friday evening, after Emma and Marina had left. I need to be honest with you. That child has a gift I've seen maybe twice in my 40-year career, but she's also 6 years old. The people at tomorrow's gallery will try to break her, not celebrate her. Are you sure you want to put her through this? No, Sebastian admitted. I'm not sure at all. But Emma wants to go. She wants to prove that she matters. She shouldn't have to prove that. She's a child. Professor Chen gathered his materials. But if you're going to do this, stay close to her. Don't let them isolate her. Don't let them make her feel small. After the professor left, Sebastian found himself staring at Emily's photograph on his desk. His daughter had been 4 when she died, bright and curious and full of life. He had failed to protect her, failed to be there when it mattered. He couldn't fail Emma too. Saturday evening arrived with the weight of inevitability. Sebastian picked up Emma and Marina from their small apartment, a modest 2-room place that made his chest tight with understanding. This was what Marina's 3 jobs provided. This was the reality his family mocked without ever witnessing. Emma wore a simple navy dress that Marina had sewn herself, with small butterflies embroidered on the collar. She looked beautiful and terrified. You don't have to do this, Sebastian told her as they drove to the gallery. We can turn around right now. I want to, Emma said, but her voice trembled. I want them to see that my mom matters, that I matter, that we're not invisible. Marina squeezed her daughter's hand from the back seat, her eyes bright with unshed tears. The Ashford Gallery was everything Sebastian's world represented. Cold, elegant, expensive. Champagne flowed freely. Classical music played softly, and people in designer clothes discussed art they didn't understand with the confidence of those who had never been challenged. Victoria Westwood was holding court near a bronze sculpture when they entered. Her eyes widened at the sight of Emma, then narrowed with calculation. Sebastian, darling, and this must be our little artist. Victoria's smile was sharp as glass. How quaint. Grandmother. Sebastian's voice was cold. He had never introduced his mother to Emma before, and he hated doing it now. I'm not your grandmother, Victoria corrected icily. Let's not get confused about relationships here. Emma flinched, and Sebastian felt rage building. But before he could respond, Constance appeared with a group of elegantly dressed people. "Everyone, this is Emma Costa, the child prodigy Sebastian has been telling us about." Constance's voice dripped with false sweetness. "She's going to educate us all about art tonight. Aren't you, dear?" Emma looked up at Sebastian, seeking reassurance. He nodded, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. "Let's start with something simple," Jonathan said, gesturing to a nearby painting. "Tell us about this piece." Emma studied the abstract expressionist work, her small face serious. "It's in the style of Jackson Pollock, action painting, where the artist dripped and splattered paint on canvas laid on the floor. The technique was about the process of creation, not just the final image. Pollock said he wanted to be in the painting, to feel its energy." The group exchanged glances. That was more articulate than they had expected. "Very good," Constance purred. "You've memorized that nicely. But can you tell us what it means? What is the artist trying to express?" Emma tilted her head, studying the chaotic swirls of color. "Anger, maybe, or freedom. Sometimes they're the same thing. When you're angry about being trapped, freedom comes out wild and messy." She looked at Constance. "That's what I feel when I see it. How poetic." Victoria's voice was acid. "But art isn't about feelings, child. It's about technique, history, market value. You can't just make up meanings based on your emotions." "Actually," Professor Chen's voice cut through the group. Sebastian hadn't known he would be there, but he was grateful. "Art is precisely about emotional response. The technical analysis is secondary to the human connection. Emma understands that instinctively. It's what makes her exceptional." "And who are you?" Jonathan demanded. "Leonard Chen. I was chief curator at the Metropolitan Museum for 20 years. He smiled at Emma warmly. "I've been working with Emma this week. She has the finest natural understanding of art I've encountered in 4 decades of professional experience." The group fell silent, reassessing. A Metropolitan Museum curator's endorsement carried weight even in their cynical circles. But Constance wasn't finished. "Well then, let's test this exceptional understanding. Emma, I have a challenge for you." She led them to a small painting in the corner, deliberately chosen for its obscurity. "Tell us about this piece. Artist, period, significance." Emma studied the painting, a dark landscape with a single figure in the foreground. She was quiet for a long moment, and Sebastian could see doubt creeping into her expression. This was exactly what Constance wanted, to find something Emma didn't know. "I don't recognize the artist," Emma said finally, her voice small. Constance's smile was triumphant. "Of course you don't. It's a lesser-known work by—" "But I can tell you what I see," Emma interrupted, her voice growing stronger. "The brushwork is similar to the Barbizon school, maybe 1840s or 1850s. The way the light comes through the trees, that's like Theodore Rousseau. The figure is alone, but doesn't look lonely, more like they're part of the landscape, like they belong to the earth." Professor Chen leaned forward, examining the small placard beside the painting. His eyebrows rose. "Remarkable. It is Rousseau, painted in 1847. "Emma, you just dated and attributed a painting you'd never seen before based purely on visual analysis," the crowd murmured, impressed despite themselves. But Marina had seen enough. "Emma, sweetheart, you've proven your point. Can we go now?" "Not yet," Victoria said sharply. "We haven't had our real conversation yet." She turned to Marina with a predatory smile. "You've been very quiet, Ms. Costa. Tell us, how long have you been planning this?" "Planning what?" Marina's voice was careful, controlled. "This entire scheme. Getting your daughter close to my son, playing on his grief, positioning yourself to—" "Stop." Sebastian's voice was deadly quiet. "Don't you dare." "Oh, Sebastian, don't be naive." Victoria gestured dismissively. "It's obvious what's happening here. You're a wealthy, grieving widower. She's an attractive single mother with a precocious child. She saw an opportunity and—" "I never asked him for anything," Marina said, her voice shaking with restrained fury. "Not once, not ever." "Please," Constance laughed. "You expect us to believe you don't have an endgame? That you're not calculating every move?" Marina's face went pale, and Sebastian saw something crack in her composure. "You want to know about calculating moves? About working the system?" Her voice rose, years of suppressed anger finally breaking free. "I was you. I was exactly like you. The gallery went silent. What? Victoria's face showed genuine shock. Marina straightened, her voice steady now despite the tears in her eyes. My family name was Ashford. Marina Ashford Costa. Constance is my cousin. The revelation hit like a bomb. Constance went white. Jonathan's mouth fell open, and Victoria actually took a step backward. That's impossible, Constance whispered. Is it? You don't remember little Marina? Thomas Ashford's daughter? Marina's laugh was bitter. Of course you don't. I was 14 when my father lost everything in the financial collapse. One day we were attending gallery openings just like this. The next, we had nothing. And all of you, she gestured at the assembled group, every single one of you disappeared. No one returned calls. No one offered help. We became invisible the moment we stopped being useful. Sebastian stared at Marina, understanding flooding through him. This was why she had known how his family would react, why she had tried to warn him. She had lived in both worlds. My mother died from stress 3 years after we lost everything, Marina continued, her voice breaking. My father lost his battle with grief a year later. I was 17, pregnant, and alone, and not one person from this world. She gestured around the gallery, reached out to help. I cleaned houses, worked 3 jobs, raised my daughter alone. And you know what I learned? She picked up Emma, holding her close. I learned that worth has nothing to do with money, that dignity isn't bought, that my daughter, raised in a 2-room apartment, has more genuine humanity than anyone in this room ever will. The silence was absolute. Emma buried her face in her mother's shoulder, and Sebastian saw her small body shaking with sobs. This was too much. He had pushed too hard, demanded too much proof, and now this beautiful child was crying because of his family's cruelty. We're leaving, he said flatly, and I never want to see any of you again. Sebastian, wait, Victoria started. No. He turned to face his mother, and she actually flinched at what she saw in his eyes. You did this. You pushed and mocked and tested, and why? Because you couldn't stand that I found happiness with people you consider beneath us? Because admitting they have value means admitting you've wasted your life on shallow, meaningless pursuits? That's not fair, Jonathan protested. Isn't it? Sebastian gestured to the assembled crowd. Look at yourselves. You're so desperate to prove you're special that you'll destroy a 6-year-old child to maintain the illusion. Emma is more talented, more insightful, more genuinely extraordinary than anyone here. And you know it. That's why you're threatened. He turned to Marina and Emma. Let's go. But Emma lifted her head from her mother's shoulder. Her face was tear-stained, but her eyes were clear. Wait. She wiggled down from Marina's arms and walked to the center of the gallery. You want to know if I'm special? You want proof? Emma, you don't have to. Sebastian started. Yes, I do. She looked at each face in the crowd. Because if I don't, kids like me will keep being invisible. We'll keep being told we don't matter because we're poor. That our art doesn't count because we learned it from library books instead of private tutors. That we're less, somehow. She pointed to the Rousseau painting. That artist painted farmers and peasants when everyone else painted rich people. He said ordinary lives had beauty worth capturing. That's what art is supposed to do. Show truth. Show humanity. Emma walked to an empty easel in the corner where paints had been set up for a demonstration later in the evening. I'll paint something now. Original, no copying styles. Just me. And when I'm done, you can decide if poor kids can make real art or not. The crowd watched in fascinated silence as Emma began to paint. Her small hands moved with confidence, creating an image that made Sebastian's throat tight. She painted the view from her apartment window. The cramped buildings, laundry hanging between them, children playing in a small courtyard. But she painted it with such love, such attention to the light filtering through the clothes, the joy in the children's faces, the flowers someone had planted in a window box despite having so little. She painted poverty without shame. She painted her world as beautiful because it was real. When she finished, the painting was small, simple, and absolutely devastating in its honesty. This is where I live, Emma said quietly. This is my home, and it's beautiful because my mom is there and my friends are there and people help each other even when they don't have much. You think your world is better because you have more money. But you don't have this. You don't have people who care about each other without keeping score. She looked directly at Victoria. So no, I'm not trying to take anything from you. I already have everything I need. Professor Chen was wiping his eyes openly. Several people in the crowd looked uncomfortable, ashamed. Even Constance seemed shaken. Victoria stared at the painting for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was different, smaller. I had forgotten what it was like to see the world that way, before money complicated everything. She turned to Marina, and something in her face had shifted. I remember you now. Little Marina who always shared her dessert with other children, who cried when we threw away perfectly good food. Victoria's voice cracked. I'm sorry, for not helping your family, for not being the person I should have been. It wasn't enough. Sebastian knew it wasn't enough to undo years of suffering, but it was something. Constance approached Emma slowly. I was wrong about you. About what matters? She looked at Marina. About a lot of things. Emma studied her with those two wise eyes. Are you sorry because you mean it, or because I proved I was good enough? The question silenced the room again. I don't know, Constance admitted, but I want to figure that out. Sebastian knelt beside Emma. You were incredible, but we're still leaving. You've done enough. Emma nodded, exhausted. As they walked toward the exit, Professor Chen stopped them. Mr. Westwood, I want to offer Emma a full scholarship to the Young Artists Conservatory. She should be developing her gift properly, with resources and instruction she deserves. We can't afford, Marina started. Full scholarship, Professor Chen repeated firmly. No cost, just talent. He smiled at Emma. What do you say? Emma looked at her mother, seeking permission. Marina's eyes filled with tears as she nodded. Okay, Emma said softly. Thank you. As they left the gallery, Sebastian realized something fundamental had shifted. Not just in his family's perception, but in himself. He had spent 5 years hiding from life because loving meant risking loss. But Emma had shown him that isolation wasn't safety. It was just another kind of death. He looked at Marina, really looked at her, seeing the woman who had survived everything his world had thrown at her and emerged with her humanity intact. Seeing the mother who had raised a child to be extraordinary, despite having nothing. I want you both to move into the mansion, he said, as they reached the car. Not as employee and employer, as family. Marina's breath caught. Sebastian, I know it's fast. I know it's complicated. But I love that little girl like she's my own daughter. And He looked at Marina. I think I'm falling in love with you too. The words hung in the night air, impossible and true. Emma, half asleep against her mother's shoulder, smiled. Does this mean we're breakfast family forever now? Sebastian laughed, feeling lighter than he had in 5 years. Yes, sweetheart. Breakfast family forever. And for the first time since Emily died, he believed he might actually be happy again. 6 months had transformed everything. Sebastian stood at the kitchen window, watching Emma paint in the garden. The mansion's east wing had been converted into a proper art studio, with natural light flooding through new skylights. Canvas and easels stood where dusty furniture had gathered cobwebs for years. The silence he had once cultivated so carefully was now filled with laughter, music, and life. Marina appeared beside him, slipping her hand into his. She wore simple jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back casually. No designer clothes, no pretense, just herself. And she was more beautiful than anyone he had ever known. She's working on the piece for the exhibition, Marina said softly. Professor Chen thinks it might be her best work yet. They're all her best work. Sebastian smiled. I'm hopelessly biased. Good. Marina leaned against him. That's what fathers are supposed to be. The word still made his heart skip. Father. He had thought that role died with Emily. But Emma had given it back to him, not as a replacement but as a second chance. Different, but equally precious. The adoption papers came through, he said quietly. My lawyer called this morning. It's official. Emma Ashford Westwood. Marina's eyes filled with tears. She wanted your name so badly. Kept practicing her signature. Emma Westwood over and over. Our name, Sebastian corrected. Marina Ashford Westwood. Or have you forgotten you married me last month? She laughed, touching the simple gold band on her finger. The wedding had been small, Just them, Emma, Professor Chen, and surprisingly, Victoria. His mother had been subdued but genuine, trying to rebuild bridges she had burned. "I still can't believe this is real sometimes," Marina whispered. "A year ago, I was cleaning houses and hoping Emma wouldn't notice we were eating rice for the third day in a row. Now she has a studio, a conservatory scholarship, a father who adores her, and a future without limits." "You did that," Sebastian said firmly. "You raised an extraordinary child while the world tried to make you both invisible. I just opened doors you always deserved to walk through." Emma burst into the kitchen, her hands covered in paint. "Dad! Mom! Come see! I finished it!" They followed her to the studio, where a large canvas dominated the easel. Sebastian stopped breathing. Emma had painted their first breakfast together, but it wasn't a literal representation. She had rendered it in a style that blended realism with something dreamlike, almost magical. A small girl and a lonely man at an enormous table, the space between them filled with golden light. Butterflies emerged from a coffee cup, transforming into birds that flew toward windows, showing both their pasts and their futures. In one window, a young girl who looked like Emily played in a garden. In another, Marina stood alone in a small apartment, holding baby Emma. In a third, Sebastian sat in darkness. And in the final window, all three of them together, smiling, whole. "It's called Second Chances," Emma explained. "Professor Chen said artists paint what they feel, and I feel like we all got to start over. Together." Sebastian knelt beside her, his vision blurring. "It's perfect, sweetheart. You're perfect. I know." Emma grinned with the confidence of a child who was finally, truly secure. Then her expression turned serious. "Dad, can I ask you something? Anything. Do you think Emily would be okay with me? With us being a family?" The question pierced his heart, but in a way that felt like healing, not pain. "I think Emily would love you. I think she'd be glad I'm not alone anymore. And I think," his voice caught, "I think she'd want me to be happy again." "Are you? Happy?" Sebastian looked at his daughter, his wife, the studio filled with art and light and possibility. "More than I ever thought I'd be again." Emma hugged him fiercely. "Good, because I'm really happy too. And Mom is happy. And that's what families are supposed to be." The exhibition opening was everything Emma's first gallery experience should have been. Young Artists Conservatory had organized it beautifully, with Emma's work displayed alongside other talented students. But Emma's pieces drew the largest crowds, critics murmuring about technique that shouldn't be possible at her age. Victoria arrived early, carrying an enormous bouquet of flowers. She had changed in 6 months, softened. The cruelty had faded, replaced by something almost humble. "Emma, darling, these are for you," Victoria said, kneeling to her granddaughter's level. She had earned that title slowly, through consistent effort and genuine change. "Thank you, Grandma." Emma hugged her spontaneously. "Want to see my favorite painting?" As Victoria followed Emma through the gallery, Sebastian felt Marina tense beside him. Constance had just entered, hesitant, uncertain of her welcome. "I didn't think she'd come," Marina whispered. "She's been trying," Sebastian said. "Asking to help with charity initiatives. Actually doing the work, not just writing checks." Constance approached slowly. "Marina, I know I have no right to ask, but could we talk? Privately." Marina looked at Sebastian, who nodded encouragingly. "I'll watch Emma." The two women walked to a quiet corner. Sebastian couldn't hear their conversation, but he saw Marina's rigid posture gradually soften, saw Constance wipe tears from her eyes, saw them finally embrace. When Marina returned, her eyes were red, but peaceful. She apologized, really apologized, for everything. For not helping when we lost everything, for treating Emma so cruelly, for forgetting that we were family. And I told her that forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but it can create a different future. Marina smiled. "Emma taught me that. She never held grudges, just kept loving people until they loved her back." Professor Chen approached with a distinguished woman in an elegant suit. "Mr. and Mrs. Westwood, I'd like you to meet Margaret Whitmore, director of the National Gallery. She has a proposition for Emma." "Emma's work is extraordinary," Margaret said without preamble. "We'd like to feature her in our Young Masters exhibition next year. She'd be the youngest artist we've ever showcased." Marina gasped. The National Gallery? Her talent deserves that platform, but more than that, Margaret smiled at Emma, who was showing her painting to a group of admirers. Her story deserves to be told. How many brilliant children are invisible because they're poor? How many Emmas never get discovered because they don't have access or opportunity? This exhibition could change that conversation. Sebastian felt pride swell in his chest. What do you think, Emma? Want to paint for the National Gallery? Emma considered seriously. Will other kids like me get to see it? Kids who live in apartments and learn from library books? Absolutely, Margaret promised. We'll make sure of it. Then yes, Emma bounced excitedly. Because they should know they can do big things too, even if nobody believes them at first. As the evening continued, Sebastian watched his family navigate the crowd. Emma, confident and joyful, explaining her techniques to fascinated adults. Marina, graceful and poised, no longer invisible but seen. Victoria, learning to be a grandmother who earned love instead of demanding deference. Even Constance, awkwardly but genuinely trying to reconnect with the cousin she had abandoned. Jonathan appeared at Sebastian's elbow. You were right about me, he said quietly. I've been shallow and cruel, used wealth as a weapon instead of a tool. Emma showed me that. He paused. I've enrolled in a program, teaching art to underprivileged kids. Figured I should try contributing something meaningful for once. Sebastian studied his brother, seeing genuine change. That's good, Jonathan. Really good. It's a start. Jonathan looked at Emma. She's remarkable. You're lucky. I know. As the evening wound down, Sebastian found Emma sitting on a bench, staring at her painting of their first breakfast. He sat beside her. Tired, sweetheart. A little, but happy tired. Emma leaned against him. Dad, do you remember when I asked if I could have coffee with you? I remember everything about that day. I was so nervous. Mom said you were scary and I should stay in the kitchen. But you looked so sad sitting there all alone. Emma's voice was thoughtful. I'm glad I didn't stay in the kitchen. Me too, baby. Me too. Because now you're not sad anymore. And neither am I. And Mom gets to paint too sometimes. And we're a real family. She looked up at him with those impossibly wise blue eyes. That's what happens when you're brave enough to ask for what you need. Everything can change. Sebastian pulled her close. This child who had saved him without even trying. Who had walked into his carefully constructed isolation and destroyed it with one innocent question, who had shown him that love wasn't something to fear, but something to embrace, even knowing it could hurt. You changed my life, Emma Ashford Westwood, he whispered. You and your mom, you gave me a reason to live again. We're breakfast family forever, Emma said sleepily. That's what you promised. Forever, Sebastian agreed. I promise. Marina joined them, sliding her arm around Sebastian's waist. They sat together, watching the gallery slowly empty, looking at paintings that told their story. Loneliness transformed into love, isolation into family, despair into hope. Emma had asked one simple question 6 months ago. Can I have coffee with you? And in answering yes, Sebastian had found everything he thought he'd lost forever. Purpose, connection, family, love. Sometimes second chances come from unexpected places. Sometimes they come from a 6-year-old girl with paint on her hands and wisdom in her heart. Sometimes they come when you're brave enough to say yes to breakfast. And sometimes that's all it takes to change everything